Hi there, I'm David Dowdy, and I own Action Coach Lake Norman, your local business training and education and business coaching firm. And I'm excited to have John McLaughlin on the line with us today for the Business Spotlight. John owns Lockers Unlimited, has quite a history in the Charlotte market and as an entrepreneur. And John, I'm going to turn it over to you. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you landed in this business and kind of what you do, if you would.
I certainly will, David. And thank you for having me on the show. I'm a fan of the show. I've learned from your podcast, so it means a lot. It's a big day for me to be here.
Awesome.
By nature, I'm not a risk taker. I'm not a guy that would start a company, but my dad was, and he lost his job when he was 50. He started in the factory working on machinery, worked his way up to national sales manager till he was in his mid 50s, and the company got rid of him and all his buddies as they were too expensive now. They had too many benefits. You see it happen with a lot of companies. Company got bought out. He said, from this day forward, I will never work for anybody but myself. There's no way
Mm.
I'm working this hard for somebody who can get rid of me at their whim. And it just so happened he started his company about the time I was getting out of my undergraduate degree in college, and he asked me to come work for him. And he's working on the dining room. I mean, we got nothing. We got a filing cabinet and a phone, and I said, "Boy, this looks extremely risky." Uh, I could just see this going south, and all my buddies out of college are going to work for Bank of America. They're going to move up the ladder. I'm going to be in the dining room. I said, I'll tell you, but I knew I could learn from him. So I said, here's what I'd like to do. I'll promise you 2 years, and that's it. Then I got to go somewhere safer, but I know I can learn a lot in 2 years. So I'll give you 2 years. And that was 1987. And I still work for that same company in 2024. So what I learned through that process was what he learned the hard way. Putting your fate in someone else's hands is the true risk. Running your own business and controlling your destiny, it's where you want to be. It seems risky when you're starting it, but actually it's the safest move.
Yeah, that's all. So is the business today basically what it was when he started it back in
Well,
87,
we
85?
made a bad mistake early on, several. And when you're starting out, you try new things and they don't always work. But
Right.
where what we did wrong, the big one was we didn't pay attention to sales tax. We thought if we didn't collect it, we didn't have to remit it. We were in construction. We thought, well, the contractors are probably collecting the tax and remitting it. We don't have to worry about it. Well, that wasn't always true. It depends how the contract's written. So we got audited by the state of North Carolina, and they wanted to know where all the sales tax was that we didn't remit over the past 3 or 4 years. And we didn't know we were supposed to. Simple, dumb mistake, but it cost us that business. The only way we could get out of that situation was to say, we're going to put this company down and we're going to start over and we're going to do it right now. We paid them what we owed them. But a big life lesson there, pay attention to your record keeping and learn about stuff like sales tax, because it'll do you in if you're supposed to collect it. They don't have much mercy for you when you say, well, we didn't know. It's just not a good
No,
excuse.
you can
That doesn't
plead
work very well.
ignorance, but it doesn't necessarily.
It does. They want what they are owed.
That's
So the
that's
company
right.
name changed and the structure changed. But now we're a $5 million a year company. We've got 7 employees. All the things that you think you might get to someday, but it's also been well over 30 years, 32 or 33 years.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Well,
yeah,
that's fantastic. So
yeah.
so you did have a little bit of a reset a
Oh
number of
yeah,
years ago. If you had to start it,
and
you've learned a lot. If you had
and
to start over again now,
yes.
what do you think you do different in 2024 here?
Well, for sure, you learn about before you start, you make a plan, and this plan, you might have to throw this plan out the window in 2 weeks, because what you think is going to work is probably not going to work. You've got to be able to change your strategy until you find out what works. I always told people when I taught, when you start, you have a limited number of mistakes. You're going to make them because it's the only way you can learn what's working and what's not. But it doesn't matter how much money you start with, there's a limited number of mistakes. Just don't make the big deal breakers like sales tax. That's a killer. A lot of people try to grow too fast, but that's what I would do. I would have spent more time planning. I would have had better record keeping in place. We did a poor job of that. We were too busy trying to stay alive and make sales. Then we thought, well, the bookkeeping's not important. As long as we're making sales, then we can survive. But there's a whole different, attitude when you get called on the carpet for sloppy bookkeeping. And back then we didn't have computers, so it's easier now. But that's the two big ones for me. Have a better plan and learn about the consequences of not withholding, sales tax or even payroll tax. A lot of
Right.
people don't learn that until they owe a bunch and then they don't have it, and it gets really messy fast.
Oh yeah, yeah. I appreciate the comments about you're going to make mistakes. One of the
Absolutely.
favorite book titles that I've read, Keith Cunningham's The Road Less Stupid. And it's all about, feel free to make those small mistakes, and test and measure results on a smaller scale. But man, when you're swinging for the fences and go all in, those are the things that are hard to recover from over a lifetime. So
Absolutely, yeah.
good.
And that's the ones you want to try to avoid. And honestly, the best way to learn to not avoid them is to learn from what you're doing, Action Coach and places like you that can help somebody who's just starting out and keep them away from those as many mistakes as possible to keep them alive long enough until they get the market figured out and all that. I mean, there's resources there. We didn't know it or we didn't pay enough attention to it. But if I could do it over, I would certainly do that part different.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they say success leaves clues. Man, you just follow the trail of other people that have been there and learned that. So
Oh, absolutely.
what are some of those bigger lessons that come to mind for you? You've mentioned the bookkeeping and planning. Are there some other learnings that might come to mind as a business owner now?
You know what I learned, and I learned it through my own process, was there was 2 or 3 times when I didn't see a future for my company. And I honestly said and it wasn't necessarily anything I did. Market conditions changed.
Mm.
The people we were buying and from changed. My customer base changed. And I got down to the point where I had a partner and I told him we're going to sell the company. This is back in the early 90s. I had signed a 5-year lease, which was crazy on a big building. I thought we'd always do well. And then we had, Y2K screwed up our distribution channel. Then September 11th screwed up everything. And I got to where I couldn't pay this rent anymore. And then my house was on the line. And I said, this is it. We'll get what we can for this company and we're going to move forward. And best thing that ever happened. He said, well, I'm not quitting. He said, in fact, I don't see how you could possibly quit. He said, you just need to go out and work a little harder and find a new customer base. And this is my best friend from 8th grade. And I told the guy, I said, well, I'm not going to leave. If you think we should continue, then I'll continue with you. But we're going to go down in flames. I can promise you. But that's okay. That's where we're going to go. If you're not willing to quit, then I'll stay with you. And as soon as I made that decision, everything got better. And it seems like the successful people that I read about or learn from, they all had that moment of truth where they were ready to throw in the towel, and for good reasons, but they didn't. And then once they decided, nah, we're going to gut it out, whatever it takes, everything seems to come back. It's almost like you're tested to your very bottom, and then everything was fine after that. But those are the people that make it. They just don't let anything make them quit.
That's all.
Determination is the key.
And it kind of ties into my next question in that, there's so many different misconceptions about what it's like to be a business owner. Of course you're making a ton of money and get to set your own schedule and have all this freedom. And, that's a big misconception, but what, maybe that's something you can speak to as a misconception, but are there some other misconceptions that come to mind for you and kind of how you deal with them or have addressed them?
I had the opportunity to teach in a minimum security prison. So I'm teaching guys that, our plan was we met for 11 weeks. We're going to write a business plan. And when you get out, you've got a business plan. We're going to go through everything I can possibly think of to get you ready. The concept being that if you've got a felony on your record, getting a job could be tough. Starting your own business is a better move because if you come and provide a service for me, I'm probably not going to ask about your background. I don't care. You're not an employee, so it doesn't matter. But invariably, these guys thought, well, if I start a business, it'll be successful very, very quickly. I can get this thing up and running. And within a year, I'm going to be kicking back and I'm going to have people running it for me. And it's going to be great. So yeah, this is going to happen fast and I'm going to make a lot of money and then I won't have to work very hard. And that's what you heard it time and again. And my number one thing was it'll be the hardest thing you've ever done in your life. And if you're not willing to work weekends, holidays, 20-hour days when you have to, go work for somebody else because that's what it's going to take to be successful. And it's going to take a long time. And even then, you're going to need to get lucky a few times. You can be the best at what you do, but things are going to have to fall right for you, or at least you're going to have to realize the opportunities. But those were the ones that I came away with. Was it's going to be quick and easy, and then I'll be wealthy and I can just let other people run it for me.
Yeah, about the time you think you've got it figured out,
yeah,
the
everything
economy
changes. Everything changes. Something changes, and your distribution channel, your customer base, a million different things, and you've got to be able to respond and react quickly to make it through that.
You seem to have a lot of joy in your life, just the way that you speak. You've experienced a lot of things. And, over the years since 87-ish that you got into it, you've seen some growth. I think you said you're a $5 million company now. And what has been some of those surges or what do you attribute your growth to over the years? And I imagine it's
It's
gone
a
up and down.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've had everybody does. And but for me it was hard work. I was willing to go in there and work whenever I needed to and do most of the work myself. The big lesson I learned from my father, he was a sales manager and he would go out and set up new companies to sell his product.
Mhm.
And invariably what he would see is a company that's doing well. Then you go back in 6 months and they're doing extremely well. And then you go back in 6 more months. Now they went from 2 employees to 10. Everybody's got a company car. Everybody's got a cell phone. They hit a really good growth period, but they grew too fast. And then here comes that down cycle we're talking about. Their fixed costs are way too high. And invariably you come back in 6 more months and the door is locked. I mean, they're done. He saw it again and again and again. So what he beat into my head was you keep your overhead as low as you possibly can,
Mm.
for as long as you possibly can. People are very expensive. So instead of hiring somebody, do it yourself as long as you can, because that way you can survive the storm that is invariably coming. And it was the best advice I ever got. It's probably what got us through the rough times was we were very lean,
It,
because you
that's
think,
that's
yeah, yeah,
genius the way that you said it because you started out this whole thing about knowing your numbers, having a good
yes,
bookkeeping accounting system to where you can see what your overhead is relative to what your revenue and gross profit is, right?
absolutely. We always taught learn your break even point. How much money do I have to make each month to pay all my fixed costs? If I don't know that number, and I've met so many people that don't, well, then I
Right.
don't know if I'm profitable or not. And if I don't know if I'm profitable, what's the point of this? And you see, I've met plenty of people that were losing money, but they thought if they just worked harder, it would get better. And it was like, well, let's see now. Are you charging enough? Is your profit there? Are you
Right.
putting your resources into the wrong area? Maybe, but you don't know it if you don't have your numbers. And if you don't have your numbers, I mean, you're just shooting in the dark.
That's right. And maybe preaching the choir here, but there's multiple financial reports that you really should be looking at. And if you're only looking at one, or
Yeah,
certainly, as you know, if you're running your business based on, hey, there's money in the checking account or there's not money
right.
in the checking account, that's not the
Yeah,
meter of how your business is doing, right?
not at all. It's a very small measurement. And all that, you could look at sales and say, well, our sales have tripled, but is it profitable business? Because anybody, in construction can be the low bidder. There's no trick there. But am I making enough to cover my fixed costs? And if I'm not, then I've got a real problem. And it's just going to be a matter of time before I learn that. And probably by then it's going to be too late to fix it.
Yeah.
So, that was hard work, and then keeping the overhead low. It takes a lot of financial discipline. I think, you got to, when that money's in the bank, you can't just spend it. You've got to hold it because you've got so many withholding taxes and rent and all these bills that are going to come. And that's hard for some people. When they get up to $10,000 in the bank, they've never had $10,000. They think, well, now I go out and get a new car, or now I get out and buy new equipment. And it's like, you got to have the discipline to hold on to that money to keep your bills current, to keep your employees paid.
Yeah.
It's too easy to go out and say, well, we've got it made now. And you see it again and again, where you've just got to hang back and grow slowly, keep some resources aside.
Yeah. It does take a lot of discipline, which, there's discipline in the business, but then you also have a personal life, I would
Right.
imagine. And there's
Yeah.
a trick to balancing not just the financials between personal and business, but your time so that you can take care of your own health. I mean, how do you balance all of that with family, friends, personal health, all those kind of things as well?
Well, now it's easy because I'm only working 3 days a week. I've
Oh,
turned it
there you
over
go.
to the young people, so I can pretty much come and go as I please.
Yeah.
But I do try to pull my weight too. I'm certainly not just there to coast. But when I started out, like I said, I was keeping my overhead low, and I like working hard. And the only reason that I was able to get away with that is I have a very understanding and supportive wife who,
Mm.
I told her, we're going to take the day off after Thanksgiving. That's a 4-day weekend we can take. And any of these 3-day weekends, we'll go wherever you want, but I can't take a week. I took a week on my honeymoon, and I didn't take another week for probably 10 or 12 years. And
Wow.
it was just, we're going to the beach or we're going to do this, but it was always 3-day, 4-day weekends. And maybe that was on me because I'm a really poor delegator. I've
Mm.
gotten better, but at the time I really didn't like other people handling my customers or anything like that. But I've gotten over that. But at the time it was we're just going to work, every day. We're going to be there every
So
day.
I can't help myself. I've got to ask the question, how do you get over that fear of delegation, or what's worked for you to start letting go and not be there 5 days a week, 3 days a week now? Maybe it was 7 days a week at one point, but
Yeah.
what's worked for you in being able to let go of the reins a little bit and trust some other people to
And that's a great
help?
question because, like I said, that was my big struggle. I think what we are is we're a very customer oriented company.
Okay.
And my biggest fear is I'm going to build up this great relationship with a customer and somebody's going to mishandle it. And that's going to be the end of that. And that would I would destroy me. But I was lucky enough to bring somebody in who watched me, how I handled customers long enough, how I talked on the phone, what my mannerisms were, how I handled a problem, that they could mirror pretty much what I was doing, to the point where people would talk to them on the phone and not sure if it was me or them.
Mm.
And then by then we realized they had gotten at least as good as me and maybe better. And, and so then I was like, well, let them run it. They're doing everything right. And if they have a question or concern, they'll check with me. But you can just tell by the results that they're doing a very good job, that they get it. They get how I do things or how I want things done.
Yeah, so
Took a long
those
time.
those folks that you're able to delegate to, then I mean, there's an art form in being able to identify the right employees for your organization. Give us a little insight into what's worked for you and helping to sift those out of the masses.
There's another one you learn the hard way by making mistakes. But what I've learned over the years is the most important aspect of hiring somebody is, are they going to fit into the culture of the company you've created? They don't have to be the most qualified person. We've had some very, very qualified people that I thought, well, if we bring them in, it's going to cause conflicts with how we do things. They're just not the type of person that's going to fit. And if they don't fit, then I got a problem with everybody all of a sudden. So it's difficult. The way I like to do things is, there's no job beneath me as the owner of the company. I will go back and build lockers with the guys if they need me to. I'll sweep the floor. I'll fix old lockers. Whatever needs to be done, I'm back there hands on. And when the guys see that, they say, oh, here's the owner of the company. He could be home, he doesn't have to work if he doesn't want to, but he's back here getting his hands dirty. Well, we're all kind of doing this together.
Mm-hmm.
And if I bring in somebody who thinks that, well, that's beneath me, I'm an office worker. I would never go back in and, let's say, unload a truck or load a truck or do any of that stuff. That's not why I'm here. And then we've got a pecking order all of a sudden that I'm trying to avoid. And then we've got a conflict with, whose job is it now, and stuff that I
Mm-hmm.
won't, I don't want that. I want everybody to pitch in, and when there's a job to do, we do it together, everybody. And there's no real roles. I mean, there's roles, but there's nothing that's beneath
Gotcha.
anybody. Yeah.
And
And
that
it's
takes
hard
a
to
special
get there.
individual, yeah,
It
to
does.
buy into that.
It does. And we try to keep the egos out of it, as much as we can. And if we got somebody in who was headstrong or felt like they were a little more entitled than the rest of us, we'd have a real problem. And even if they were great at what they did, I think the downside wouldn't be worth it, because then
Right.
I've got a problems with everybody there who all of a sudden is trying to figure the pecking order. You know,
Yeah. The people are such a huge aspect. Matter of fact, across the business, there's so many different things that come into play as a business owner. That's a whole different skill set to building lockers or sales or marketing.
it's, it definitely is.
So maybe a final word of wisdom or a nugget or two that you want to share, maybe that we didn't cover, that might encourage a business owner out there that's trying to get to the next level.
My advice would be, grow slowly. Even if things are going really well, and they will, you'll have periods when you think you've got it all figured out and everything's just clicking. Uh, this is the time when you want to pull back a little bit. The growth is great, but make it grow slowly, because it's too easy to get caught up into this. We've got it all figured out. Now we're going to take over the market. Let's get aggressive. Let's hire a bunch of people. Let's do, everybody gets a new company car. We're going to be king of the mountain, spend a bunch of money on advertising that we can't get back. And then we're going to hit a bump in the road. And you just see it so many times when all of a sudden now I can't pay my bills and it's all over. And if we'd have done it a little slower, then we could have made it through. And I think that's the difference between getting to 20 years and not, or even getting to 5 years and not. Because success usually comes pretty good if you've got things figured out at the beginning, but then, like you say, everything changes. So
So
be ready for that.
a strong foundation. You can build on a good, strong foundation.
Exactly right. That's what you want. Yeah, that's exactly right, David.
Yeah. That's great, John. I really appreciate it. John McLaughlin with Lockers Unlimited. Thanks so much for your insight today and being on the Business Spotlight.
And thank you for having me, David. It's a pleasure.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.